The vast expanse of space stretched before Earth's fleet, a cold, silent canvas upon which humanity's fate would soon be written. General Alexander Graves stood at the command center of the flagship Tyrant's Fury, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that illuminated the darkened room. 1,000 warships, each one more advanced than the last, loomed like silent titans behind her. The fleet was poised, ready to assert Earth's place in the galaxy, whether the galaxy was ready or not. Approaching the Galactic Council's orbit, General Commander Alan Ruiz, her second-in-command, reported. His voice crackled through the calm, steady but tinged with the uncertainty shared by every officer in the room. Alexandra didn't need to turn to face him. She could feel the tension in the air. This was history in the making, humanity's first direct challenge to the established powers of the galaxy. The summit they were heading toward was a momentous occasion. Earth had been sidelined for centuries, ignored as nothing more than a backwater world of unremarkable creatures. But all of that was about to change. She had made sure of it. "I know," she replied, her voice firm, cutting through the tension. "Keep the fleet in formation. No one deviates. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Ruiz hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "And if they want peace?" Alexandra turned slowly, her eyes locking with his. "Then we'll show them it's not for the taking." She pivoted back to the display, her fingers hovering above the console. The images of the other ships appeared, each one a silent testament to the humanity's newfound power. The warships were sleek and imposing, their black exteriors gleaming under the dim lights of the bridge. Each ship had been designed for one purpose: combat. And that purpose was soon to be tested. The Galactic Council, a sprawling conglomerate of the galaxy's most advanced species, had long regarded Earth as a primitive, unimportant world. Humans had made no attempts to attend the summits or engage in galactic politics. But that had changed. After decades of isolation, Earth had entered the fold, bringing with it a fleet unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The Tyrant's Fury was the largest of the warships, its black steel hull bristled with weapons that could decimate a planet. But more than that, it carried the weight of humanity's pride. The warships that followed it were smaller, but they were no less powerful. Every one of them had been built with one goal: to make sure Earth was never dismissed again. "General, we've received a message from the Council," Ruiz said, his voice strained. Alexandra glanced at him. The look in his eyes told her everything. This wasn't a simple diplomatic greeting. "Put it through," she ordered. A moment later, the holographic display shifted, and the familiar, unflinching face of Consul Varksith appeared before them. His species, the Zithari, were tall and alien, their faces pale and almost featureless. Their elongated eyes regarded Alexandra with a dismissive air. "General Graves," Varksith's voice resonated through the room, cold and deliberate. "I trust you are aware that your presence here is not only unwelcome but a violation of galactic protocol?" Alexandra's hand clenched at her side. This was not how she'd imagined the conversation going, but she refused to be intimidated. Earth had been patient for too long. It was time for that patience to end. "I'm aware of the protocol, Consul," she said, her tone calm but unwavering. "But I believe Earth has earned its seat at the table. We've spent far too long waiting in the shadows while the galaxy assumed our silence was a sign of weakness." Varksith's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into something resembling a sneer. "You mistake silence for wisdom, General. Your species' lack of participation in our summits was a decision made for your benefit. Now you come here, in force, demanding attention. It will not be given so easily." "That's the problem," Alexander shot back. "You never gave us a chance. Earth is ready to contribute, but we will not be treated as an afterthought. You'll either acknowledge us, or we'll make sure you do." A tense silence filled the room, punctuated only by the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Varksith's image flickered slightly, as if considering her words, but his expression remained unreadable. "Your fleet may be impressive, but you are no match for the full might of the Galactic Council," he finally said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Then we'll see whose might holds more weight." Alexandra replied, her voice low but filled with resolve. The hologram of Varksith blinked out, and the tension in the room only deepened. Alexandra turned to Reese, her mind already racing through contingencies. Bring the fleet into position. If they want a fight, we'll give them one. But no one fires unless I say so. Understood? Reese nodded, his face grim. Understood, General. As the orders were relayed, Alexandra allowed herself a moment of reflection. It had been years since she had been in a position like this, leading humanity into the unknown, where every decision could tip the balance between peace and war. The Council had underestimated them, and now Earth was prepared to make them regret it. The fleet's engines roared to life, and the ships began to drift into position, their massive forms eclipsing the distant stars. Earth had arrived not to ask for a seat at the table, but to claim one. The time for diplomacy was over. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity was no longer a forgotten species. All systems online, General, Breeze reported. We're ready. Good, she replied, her gaze turning toward the stars. Let's remind them why they shouldn't ignore us. The fleet surged forward, breaking through the stillness of space with a power that sent ripples through the cosmos. Earth had made its move. Now, the galaxy would have to reckon with its strength. The doors to the Galactic Council's main chambers slid open with a soft hum, and General Alexandra Graves stepped into the heart of the galaxy's power. The air was thick with the cold hum of diplomacy, a place where the fate of entire worlds was often decided in silence and whispers. But Earth wasn't here to whisper. They weren't here to ask for favors. Earth had come to demand respect. The room was vast, an ethereal expanse of shimmering walls that pulsed with a strange, alien energy. Giant floating screens displayed holographic representations of various species, each one seated in their designated place at the circular council table. The Zithri, with their towering forms and pale, flawless skin, loomed over everyone else. There were others too, the massive, Insectivrothi, their exoskeletons gleaming like polished armor, the sleek, feline Draxians, their eyes glinting with intelligence and contempt, and the sharp-faced, ice-eyed Meflorians who seemed to ignore the others, focused entirely on their own agenda. Alexandra stood tall, her black military uniform crisp and sharp, her every movement a reflection of the years of training and discipline that had shaped her. Behind her, the Earth delegation, officers, diplomats, and strategists, followed her in silence. She could feel their eyes on her, the weight of the moment pressing down, but she refused to falter. She reached the center of the room, the hum of the council's chatter dying down as she addressed the assembly. Honorable Consul Varksith, esteemed members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice unwavering. I am General Alexandra Graves of the Terran Fleet. I speak for Earth, a species long ignored but now determined to be heard. The faces before her ranged from indifferent to openly hostile. The Council had not been expecting Earth, and they certainly had not anticipated a fleet of this magnitude. Varksith, seated at the head of the table, regarded her coolly, his alien eyes studying her with calculated disdain. You are bold, General, Varksith said, his voice deep and chilling. But you misunderstand your place. Earth has not earned the right to sit with the galaxy's true powers. Your planet is young, chaotic, and, until recently, irrelevant. Alexandra's gaze never wavered. We were irrelevant, but we are not anymore. Earth has achieved more in a century than some species have in millennia. Our fleet is not a threat, it is a promise. We come here not to beg for inclusion but to demand it. The other members of the council exchanged uneasy glances, but Varksith's expression remained unchanged. Demand? He repeated, his lips curling into something between a sneer and a smile. Do you think the galaxy will simply bow to your demands because you've built a fleet? Alexandra's lips tightened. I think the galaxy will recognize that Earth is not to be ignored anymore. You've kept us on the fringes, dismissed our capabilities, but no longer. The strength of our fleet is not the only thing that has changed. We've come to show you that humanity will no longer be a bystander. Her words echoed in the room, and for a brief moment, even the coldest of the council members seemed to shift in their seats. But Varksith was unmoved. He glanced around, his gaze cold and dismissive. You come to us with threats, he said, his voice like ice, and demand that we acknowledge you as equals. But what makes you worthy of our respect, General Graves? What makes you different from the countless other species that have come and gone? Alexandra's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting through the tension. Humanity is unique because we refuse to give up. We fight to survive. We adapt. We innovate. When others falter, we press forward. When others fall silent, we speak. Speak? Varksith interrupted, his tone mocking. And what do you speak of, Earth? Your history is riddled with war, destruction, and chaos. You speak of survival, but survival does not guarantee respect in the galaxy. Alexandra felt the heat of the moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. But she knew she had to make her case now, before the council dismissed her entirely. We've learned from our past, she said, her voice firm. Every step forward for humanity has come at a price. But we've built something from that price. Something you might not understand. We don't just survive, we thrive. And that is why we're here. To prove that Earth belongs. The silence that followed was thick. It felt as though the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. But it wasn't just the council members that were watching. Outside, across the reaches of space, the fleet hung in the void like an unblinking eye. They were Earth's strength, its shield and sword, ready to strike at the first sign of betrayal. Varksith shifted in his seat, and for a moment, Alexandra wondered if he had been shaken by her words. But then his eyes glinted with a calculating gleam. You are bold, General, he said slowly. But words alone will not change your fate. The Council will not be intimidated by mere rhetoric. The tension in the room grew palpable as Varksith's words settled into the silence. Alexandra stood her ground, her mind racing through every possibility. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't expected him to be so dismissive. He wasn't just underestimating humanity. He was actively trying to quash their right to exist on the galactic stage. We don't expect you to be intimidated, Consul, Alexandra replied. But we are not here to play by your rules. We've come to change them. Then you'll learn quickly that change doesn't come without consequence, Varksith said with a slight smirk. The Galactic Council does not yield to threats. Alexandra's jaw clenched. She had expected this. She had prepared for it. But her patience was wearing thin. Earth was not a threat. Earth was a force. And if the Council refused to see that, she would make them. I am not here to threaten you, she said coldly. I'm here to tell you that Earth will no longer be ignored. We have a fleet that can reshape the galaxy if necessary. But we do not seek war. We seek respect. Varksith's eyes hardened, his smirk fading. And what if I don't give it to you? Alexandra took a step forward, her resolve solidifying. Then we'll take it. The silence that followed was suffocating. The council members looked among themselves, their indecision palpable. Varksith glared at Alexandra, his mind clearly working. The fate of humanity was hanging in the balance, and with it, the fate of the entire galaxy. You are playing a dangerous game, General, Varksith finally said, his voice low and menacing. I'm not playing, Alexandra replied, her voice sharp. I'm winning. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy had only just begun. The tension in the council chamber crackled like static in the air, thick and charged with unspoken threats. The silence was broken only by the subtle hum of the alien technology surrounding them, its blue light casting eerie shadows across the cold, polished floor. General Alexandra Graves stood her ground, her gaze unwavering, while across the table, Consul Varksith's eyes burned with cold calculation. Do you really believe that Earth's fleet can challenge the might of the Galactic Council? Varksith's voice was laced with scorn. You speak of respect, but your arrival here, uninvited and armed, speaks only of arrogance. Alexandra didn't flinch. Her resolve had hardened in the time since Earth's fleet had entered the Council's orbit. The peaceful overtures she had hoped for had crumbled under the weight of Varksith's pride. It was clear now, words would not win them a place at the table. Action would. I speak of survival, Alexandra replied. And Earth will survive, whether you acknowledge us or not. Varxitha's lip curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Survival? You misunderstand, General. This is not about survival. This is about power. And I control the power in this room. The cold arrogance in Varxitha's voice was enough to make anyone doubt, but Alexandra had never been swayed by threats. She knew the Council's power was built on diplomacy and military might, but what they failed to realize was that humanity had something they didn't: unpredictability. Earth didn't follow the same rules, and that made them dangerous. I'm done negotiating, she said, her voice hard and final. If you won't respect us, we'll make you. A shift rippled through the council members as the words sank in. There was no mistaking the resolve in Alexandra's voice, no denying that Earth had come to stake its claim. Varxitha's expression darkened, his fingers tapping the table as if weighing his next move. You would risk war? He asked, his voice low but filled with a quiet fury. War? No, Alexandra said. But I will not back down. You forced our hand. Her words hung in the air, and for a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the room intensified, a soft but constant reminder of the tension between them. And then, as if on cue, the room's massive view screen flickered to life, displaying a live feed from the outer reaches of the system. Thousands of warships, sleek and deadly, appeared on the screen, Earth's fleet. The ships were massive, their dark exteriors gleaming with weapons, their engines glowing with the promise of destruction. They're coming. Louise's voice crackled through her earpiece, steady but filled with the same anxiety shared by everyone aboard the Tyrant's Fury. The fleet's in position, General. We're ready for your orders. The council gasped collectively, the realization hitting them like a cold wave. Varxitha's eyes narrowed as the fleet came into focus, the sheer scale of it evident. He had underestimated humanity's resolve. Alexandra could almost see the gears turning in his mind as he weighed his options. This was no longer a diplomatic meeting. This was a reckoning. Do not mistake our patience for weakness, Alexandra said, her eyes never leaving Varxith. We've built this fleet for one reason, to ensure Earth's place in this galaxy. If you won't grant us that, we'll take it. A flicker of fear crossed Varxitha's face before he masked it with a cold, calculating stare. He raised a hand, signaling the others in the council to remain silent. His next words came slowly, as if measuring each one carefully. I warned you, General. The galaxy does not bend to threats. And it certainly does not bow to humans. But as his words fell into the cold air of the chamber, the warning alarms began to blare, a sharp, shrill sound that rattled the room. A council member, the Meflorian delegate, one of the more neutral species, stood up, his face turning ashen. His voice trembled with disbelief. The fleet, it's not stopping. They're moving toward the station. A cold hush fell over the chamber as every eye turned to the screen. Earth's warships, in perfect formation, advanced toward the station. The gap between them and the Council's fleet was closing rapidly. The dread was palpable, an unspoken truth sinking in. Earth wasn't just making a statement. They were preparing for war. General Graves, Varxith said, his voice edged with barely restrained fury. You have two options. Stand down now, or we will defend ourselves. And when we do, your fleet will be nothing but dust. Alexandra didn't even blink. She had prepared for this moment her entire life. She had known the stakes from the start. She had led her people to this point, and she would not let them be dismissed again. Stand down? She repeated, her voice quiet but filled with the weight of her people's survival. I gave you that choice when I walked through those doors. Now we fight for our place. The countdown to the conflict began, and as the seconds ticked by, the room seemed to hold its breath. Earth's fleet was now within striking distance of the Council's central hub. The ship's weapons systems were fully armed, ready to unleash their devastating payload. But Alexandra knew better than to rely on brute force alone. Earth's fleet had been built for speed, precision, and strength, not mindless destruction. She turned toward Ruiz, who nodded in response to her silent command. The fleet would make its move in coordination with the rest of Earth's forces. They were not just about to destroy, they were about to show the Council that humanity had far more to offer than just war. General, Breeze's voice came through once more. All ships report ready for engagement. Do it, Alexandra ordered. Engage at will. The first salvo was launched, a burst of energy that lit up the stars as it cut through the void of space. The Council's defenses scrambled to react, but they were unprepared for the sheer might of Earth's firepower. As the first wave of shots struck, explosions rippled across the screen, tearing into the fabric of the Council's station. On the viewscreen, chaos erupted. The Council's fleet scrambled to respond, but Earth's ships were too fast, too precise. The battle had begun, but this wasn't just a battle for territory. It was a battle for respect, for recognition. It was a battle to prove that humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. The warships surged forward, their weapons lighting up the blackness of space, each strike a message: Earth had arrived. And they weren't leaving without a fight.